Our first guest had unprecedented access to the hardworking crew at The Late Show with David Letterman and talking about the final moments of the Game Changer television show that is my favorite show of all time. His book has that access in written form. It's called The Last Days of Letterman. Please welcome the author of the book, Scott Ryan. Scott, how are you?
Oh, it's great. Thanks for having me. I always wanted to be on the show 3 times.
You haven't been on the show 3 times, Scott. We just have had to record it 3 times because I didn't take your advice. And
No. It's okay, because remember how Dave would have that bond with the audience and the at-home people don't know what's going on?
Right.
See, we're just making this a Letterman.
It's an inside joke. It's an inside joke for the empty theater that we have here with us.
Right. Your studio audience is dying at my opening joke. And everyone at home is like, oh, I got to get tickets to
I wish I was there. Oh, I wish I was the one person sitting in the audience right now. Your book I have read twice, almost as many times as you've been on this show. And it is incredible. I am a diehard fan of all things David Letterman, and I grew up watching late night, and I think I matured with The Late Show. And I still to this day, when I watch clips on YouTube and full shows on YouTube, it brings me back to a place of comfort and normalcy. Reading your book was almost like I could be a fly on the wall for the entire thing, and it was so, so good. How did you get the access to the people that talked to you in this book about those final days?
Well, I started the book really as soon as the last show ended, and I immediately tweeted to Barbara Gaines. You probably don't remember this, but we used to use Twitter just to reach out to people and talk and not spread craziness. It was a crazy time in 2015. Now Twitter's a whole new place to dump things, but I just stalked her, and she didn't put a restraining order on me at all. And she said yes, and when she said yes, and she realized my intentions were to capture this moment in television history, she opened the vaults to everyone else. I mean, she would contact them ahead of time, and they would reluctantly talk to me.
I think that the stories you got out of these people are incredible, because they not only talk about the broad feelings that existed and sort of the nature of the understanding of the piece of television history they were working on, but also some really finite details of those shows. And I think that for that reason, it's a book that appeals to even the most casual fan and the most diehard fan. For you, what was one of the stories that stuck out at you that you could not believe you were hearing and put in this book?
Well, how I got those stories was by taking each person very seriously about their job. I would only talk to them about their specific job, and I never asked anyone a question about David Letterman. And I just let them spill out what they wanted to share, and I think that made a connection with us. But for me, I think the story in the book that blows me away is what happened the last night of the show. There was a lot of drama behind the scenes from the time that the show stopped filming to when it aired on CBS, and I have never heard this story anywhere but in my book, and which is very strange to me that even when my book came out, no media has picked it up. So I think that's why readers enjoy it, because it sort of has an exciting ending.
And that's very true. I had also not heard the story, but I don't want to give it away for people that haven't read the book yet. But the show came very close to not airing, correct? The final episode?
Yeah, I mean, if there are broadcast news fans out there, a couple of the people I interviewed also singled out the scene in broadcast news that's very famous for. So yeah, it's a great story that I never spoil in interviews as well, because you wouldn't think that a book like this would sort of have a surprise ending, but this one kind of does.
Scott Ryan, the author of The Last Days of Letterman, the final 6 weeks, and it is just full of great detail. As a lover of music, I've always thought that The Late Show with David Letterman was sort of the superior place in late night to play music, and you detail some of the music that appeared on those final 6 weeks so well. So much of it is so memorable. again, what sticks out at you as some of the finer musical moments in those final 6 weeks?
Well, in doing research on the book, I will admit that when I watched these episodes when they aired, I was just a fan who was really going through a grieving process, honestly. But when I studied it, what I realized is the music performances are Dave talking directly to his audience. And in interviewing Cheryl Zellickson, she booked all the music guests. She sort of walks us through why John Mayer sang what he sang, why Tracy Chapman sang what she sang. But for me, it was the Norah Jones performance of Don't Know Why. That was the episode where Martin Short was the lead guest, and then Norah was the music guest. And when she was singing Don't Know Why, Dave says she performed it 13 years earlier. She had her network debut. And I realized I saw that show, and I bought that album, and now I own every Norah Jones vinyl because of David Letterman. And watching it that night when she was singing that song, I really realized what I was going to lose, because Dave was curating my music tastes for, since I was 16 or 17 years old. And that performance really broke me. I'm curious, what broke you in the final 6 weeks? Was there something that brought it home for you that Dave was leaving?
Well, the final episode, I actually sat on the living room floor in my house and cried. I'm not ashamed to admit that, although I might think differently after this airs. But I did. It was a piece of my childhood. It was there every single night. The worst day in my life, I went home and I watched David Letterman. The most anxiety-filled day of my life, the day my first daughter was born, I went home and watched the Late Show with David Letterman. All of those moments, I got to go home and watch Dave, and it brought everything back. And that wasn't there anymore. But musically, you're exactly right. Shaping your music collection, Dave broke Hootie and the Blowfish. He heard him on the radio one day, and he went in and said, "We got to book this band." He went on and on about Pearl Jam.
Warren Zevon.
Warren Zevon, yes, but the Pearl Jam guy. Why can't I think of his name?
Eddie Vedder.
Eddie Vedder. And he just basically ridiculed the guy until he came on and sang a little bit of the song Black, which appeared to be impromptu. He did the same thing with Lisa Loeb. I am now a huge Lisa Loeb fan. The first time I saw her perform was the song Stay from Reality Bites on The Late Show.
Of course.
The music on that show was incredible. And just broadly, I felt the same way as you did with Norah Jones, that we're going to be losing some of that now. I can't tell you an artist that I've seen break on late night television in the last 5 years since Dave retired.
Well, mostly because who even really wants to watch it? I mean, it's publicists that are booking them.
Come on, we're on late night.
Yeah, but are you cultivating these people? Cheryl walks us through that Dave would come to her and say, "I just heard this on this radio station." She said it wouldn't be the same thing, that his taste was so broad that it could be all over. And he was the one that was driving her to book those people. And I forget who now. She singles someone out. I'm so sad I can't think of the guy, but he's the guy that dances really crazily. He gets down. I can't think of that guy's name. It's killing me.
Regis?
Yeah, it very well may have been Regis, but it's not.
But his musical taste drove so much. I just today watched the performance from Reverend Al Green doing Let's Stay Together from the mid-'90s sometime, and Dave was so excited to do it. That's, I think, one of the things that we're missing, and people maybe didn't even appreciate until he was gone. But we have to wrap up so we can honor one of Letterman's traditional legacies of the performance of Christmas Baby, Please Come Home, for our final show before Christmas. But Scott, come back and see us again. This book is in stores now, The Last Days of Letterman, and you have one on Moonlighting coming out June 1st. I love the way you write, and I love what you love. So thank you very much for putting this book out, and thanks for joining us. Come back again.
Thank you, and let's record this whole thing again.
We will. Scott Ryan